So good afternoon, or good evening, or morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to Delta's Connected Home Service free webinar. My name is Scott Dwyer, and I'm Principal Analyst here at Delta.
And my name is Arthur Jouannic. I am a Senior Analyst at Delta and managing the Connected Home research here at Delta.
This webinar is based on research from our Connected Home service, an annual subscription service that answers all your key questions on how the connectivity markets will evolve. We'll explain a bit more about this later. Before we get started, we'll just give you some information on how to use the software for this webinar.
Yeah, so you probably can see this control panel on your screen, and there are two ways to ask questions if you would like to, and we really encourage this. We would like to have lots of discussions with you and try to answer your questions as much as we can. So if you want, you can either raise your hand in the kind of small yellow hand button, in which case we will try to see that, to spot you and allow you to speak. Or the best way probably to do that is to ask questions in the questions button, and we are monitoring your questions, and if we can answer the questions through the webinar, we will do it, and if we don't have the time, we will follow up with you after the webinar by email.
And first question already in, so good question. Are we going to share the PowerPoint material at the end?
Yes, we will. So the PowerPoint will be available in PDF after the webinar, so we will contact you anyway if you want it. There will also be a YouTube link shared with you, and the whole presentation will be available there, so you can share it with your colleagues or watch it again if you like.
Okay, thanks, Arthur. So let's take a look at the agenda for today, and we'll start off just by giving a bit of introduction and scene setting and explain a little bit about who Delta is for those who don't know us. We'll then look at how we see connectivity disrupting the heating market in Europe, and looking at actually some key facts about the heating market, what is the size of the opportunity, and where we see the key battles really happening. And then we'll wrap it up with some summary and some overview about the discussion today. And it'll take around 45 minutes in total. So first, a little bit about Delta, and for those who don't know us. So at Delta, our focus is really on heat and distributed energy. And we've been supporting our clients in this area since 2004. In the bubble diagram, you'll see the key areas and topics we cover there, and these are based around the technology areas and cross-cutting themes. And our prime mission really is to help our clients navigate this huge transformation we're seeing in the energy system, where we're seeing distributed generation, more service-orientated offerings, more customer-centric offerings, really being behind some of the key drivers. As a research consultancy, we've got as much focus on the research service side as the bespoke consultancy side. So it's really a relationship-based business we're in. And you can see there the typical types of clients we work for: manufacturers, the heating industry and beyond, the utilities, but also policy makers, network companies, and technology developers. The type of thing we do is a lot of commercialization strategy work, detailed analysis on the markets, the technology, the policy, and also the customer, which is really a key part of the insights we bring. In terms of the research services, so you'll see the three main pillars around which our offerings are based, around digital and services innovation, which is where Connected Home Service fits in and is a key part of our offering here, but also around heat. It's an area we've been involved in for a long time, and really bringing that insight around the different technologies, around the customer aspects as well, and also around distributed generation, flexibility, taking into account power only or energy storage as well. On connected homes, well, we've relatively long track record in this area, even though it's a fairly new area, following it since 2010, and Arthur can tell you a bit more about that.
Thanks, Scott. So the Connected Home service is the leading European research service for the connected home market, focusing mostly on energy. It provides clients and subscribers with 4 key points. The first one being in-depth reports on hot topics, really key topics of the industry, things that we are seeing in the market and want to focus on, which is what this webinar comes from. So I will talk about this more in a minute. But we usually do 4 to 5 per year, and actually we are growing the scope, so it's very likely that our subscribers will see 7 to 8 reports per year now. The second main aspect of the service is about the European market analysis. So we understand everything that happens in the European market in terms of connected home and energy, who are the key players, what are the dynamics, what are the sales channels, etc. And we provide country by country future views of the market for 8 to 9 of the biggest European markets. We also track the market for you. So what we do, we look at blogs, newspaper articles, conferences, and we provide a summary of the kind of the news updates, what's happening in the market. Mostly the key one. We filtered all the noise and provide our views on that. We also provide event summaries sometimes to individual clients and so on. And finally, for the Connected Home service, but mostly at Deltaee, we are not just report providers. We provide you with support. We help your company benefit from the service. So we often do on-site workshops, phone calls with our team of analysts. We answer emails as soon as we can. So it's really about supporting you, developing a successful business around Connected Home. And again, at the bottom of this slide, you can see the usual range of users that our clients have. It could come from the innovation, the strategy, marketing, business development, product management, market intelligence. Sometimes the board of big organizations have access to our presentations to a better understanding and how to make better decisions. In terms of I talked about the in-depth report that we provide. So this connected heating appliances report, which we will talk about some of the findings in this webinar, comes from a long series of reports. The last one was in February. We reviewed 4 of the key European markets. And in the future, we're already starting to work on that actually. We are looking at the positioning and strategies of the European telecoms, insurance, security companies, and how all of these try to enter the connected energy part of the market. And even broader at the energy market in general. We will also look at the Italy and Nordics country reports, so providing an update on where the market is at and how this is going to change. We are currently actually reviewing ongoingly the big platform providers, so the Amazon, Google, Apple, etc., trying to provide the best views on how they impact the European energy market. And the last idea we have for the end of the summer will be an analysis of lots of use cases involving the energy side of Connected Home. For example, connecting your door lock with your smart thermostats, and as soon as you turn on your door, the thermostat will switch on, etc.
So if these are hot topics for you and you share interest in them, get in touch. It all goes into forming our view and informing our research and shaping the angle we take on these markets.
Exactly, and this is a subscriber-driven service. So subscribers suggest the topics, and we try to make everyone happy by doing some things that are relevant for everyone.
So sales pitch over, but not really just about the pitch. I mean, what we're trying to explain here is that we've got a long track record in heat. We've been following the connectivity market for a relatively long time as well, and got a really unique position coming at it from an energy view as well. So that's our track record and what we do in the areas of heat and connectivity. Now we're going to explain about how we see the market being disrupted in Europe, starting with just some key facts about the European heating industry. So across Europe, there's around 8 million heating appliances installed each year in Europe. And some of the leading markets is the UK, where there's a general preference for individual heating systems, gas boilers typically, move towards combi, tankless versions, and other leading markets, Germany, Italy, Netherlands as well. It's quite a low cost commoditized market where there's not much differentiation. It's about, can vary from a couple of €1,000 to 5,000 to 7,000 euros in other markets where there's perhaps slightly different sales channels, slightly different margins being added as well. So quite a lot of geographical differences and subtleties between different markets. It's a fairly established market, so there's a couple of extremely large players involved, some recognizable names there, either German, Italian names, others which have consolidated and merged. So 5 heating appliance manufacturers really sharing around 2/3 of this market. And it's a €1 billion business, around 20 billion euros a year turnover among these companies, and employs around 120,000 people as well. So fairly important major industry. So where are the opportunities in this market? It seems obviously quite a difficult market to break into. And here we see the opportunities really being in a couple of key areas. So here you see our representation of the heating industry today. So 3 different types of heating. You've got boilers, you've got electric, you've got high efficiency heating as well, which includes the sort of more innovative, newer technologies like heat pumps or micro CHP or different hybrid technologies as well. And in terms of the boiler industry, we see a couple of key battles here around either the manufacturers, around the wholesale market, and around that final step in the value chain, the customer sales install step. So in terms of the boiler industry, we see a number of changes happening here around the decision making, how they're influencing. I mean, typically in the past, we saw installers really being a key part of this decision making. They would specify the system. The boiler manufacturers, heating equipment manufacturers would have the relationship with the installer, and the installer was left for the customer relationship. Now we're seeing this changing, and this is where customers are being more informed, and there's a question of whether there's a shift towards manufacturers wanting to own that relationship.
And what's really interesting, Scott and I recently visited one of the big German manufacturers, and where at the beginning of discussion, these people were talking about their customers, and after a few discussions, we realized that their customers were the installers and not the end users, and actually changes the whole discussion. But you can see that these manufacturers don't think about the end user; they properly think about the plumber, the installer, and we see that changing with new business models rising and a more customer-focused heating system.
That's right, and if you take a step down the value chain again towards the wholesalers and the companies that store, distribute the product as well, I mean, you're seeing big changes there. Again, where you've got some big names coming in who can quite easily take the role of the wholesaler.
Yeah, for example, Amazon, who is probably the biggest online retailer in the world, is developing a network of plumbers, installers, or maintenance companies, so that actually they want to replace the wholesaler and be part of that and be the company doing the whole of the business. So actually, if you are a wholesaler today, it's about what do you have to have in your stores, and how do you make sure that companies like Amazon don't replace you, and that's a big challenge for them.
And then that final step, as you're getting the product into the customer, into the end user's home, again, there's big changes happening there. New entrants such as Thermondo in Germany, where it's an online platform where they'll give you almost immediate quotes based on some data points you enter. The utilities are adopting this model and are using the same platform. And those new entrants, they're the ones who are training the installers, are setting the prices, and ultimately are getting the customer relationship. And electric, I mean, this is something that we've seen a lot in the last couple of years as well, as a trend towards new electric technologies being positioned as being more flexible, controllable. And there's an opportunity there, we think, as well, for opening up new value streams, like um, from flexibility, from demand response.
Yeah, so there are a lot of companies actually who have the manufacturers who have an installed base of direct electric heating. And now what they try to do is to replace their installed base with connected electric heating, so that actually they can provide flexibility to DNOs, DSOs, or the utilities in general. And that there is a big battle between this and the control providers who just put an add-on control and then provide a flexibility. And the flexibility, although it's not very valuable today, will be very, very valuable in the future once the energy transformation is complete. So you can see big battles there.
That's right, and with the new technologies as well, the high efficiency heating appliances, as we said, heat pumps, different types of hybrids, micro CHP. I mean, these technologies have certainly promised a lot in the past, but how will these grow? Can these tap into some of these new value streams that we're seeing? Can new business models and a more system approach open up some new markets and give new opportunities to new entrants? So these are some of the key battles we're seeing around the European heating market today.
But around the whole heating industry, there are actually two other industries, which are the controls industry, which is led by thermostats or radiator controls and etc. And this is changing rapidly with connectivity, because smart thermostat providers are changing the game and focusing on customers. If you think about just Nest, for example, the obvious example, they made people interested in controls, and now people are just thinking, oh well, I'm not using the control that my installers are advising. I'm actually looking on Amazon and saying like, okay, what kind of controls could I choose? And that's changing the whole game. And now it's about what to focus on, what kind of products to look for, to develop. And now that the customer awareness is raising, there are lots of things you can pitch, such as more comfort, more controls, and reduction of the bill. On top of the remote diagnostics, which provides further values to customers.
And this is where the servicing comes in as well. As we said at the start, we're seeing a general trend towards more service-orientated offerings, and whether that's bundling service contracts with energy supply or other services such as insurance, remote diagnostics, really tapping into that peace of mind proposition for the customer. I mean, this is a general trend, and as we see energy companies, suppliers, typically looking at their old business model, how do we change this, what can we do in the future, and evolving much more service-orientated offerings, whether that's around heat or other associated services.
Yeah, and British Gas is actually a perfect example of that, where they know that in the future they won't be selling energy anymore, or the margins will be too tight to make a lot of money. So what they do is they are selling boilers, they are selling boiler cover policies, and they also sell boiler insurance, and now they are doing remote diagnostics. So you can see them trying to bundle the whole service and becoming a service provider as opposed to just a commodity provider.
So we've looked at the opportunities and threats that are happening in the European market. So where does connectivity fit in? Why is connectivity disrupting the whole market? And I mean, one initial pillar, we've spoken about this already, is about around the customer side. So we're seeing customers becoming more empowered, wanting to make more decisions, being able to make more informed decisions as well, and really getting used to having quite easy to control interfaces as well. I mean, some are choosing, as Arthur said, controls before heating appliances. It's something new and interesting, something that they can really relate to. And while some are expecting lower bills, I mean, that's not always the prime driver behind it. Some want peace of mind, some want to be autonomous, have autarky as well. So we're really seeing an evolution in the types of customers and the types of things they want from an offering. Another area we're seeing where the market could be disrupted is around the heating industry value chain. Again, we've spoken about this already, but where there's changes in what the influence the installer has, how controls are flowing. Traditionally would have been through the manufacturer, but today, as Arthur said, we're seeing it go through online retailers and through other channels, through utilities. And as we've said as well, is that new entrants are really creating their own platforms, their own customer platforms, building that relationship with the customer. And companies such as Thermondo are coming up with new ways of driving business and new ways of owning that customer relationship. And energy suppliers, as we've said, really interested in offering services that may be heat or other types of services rather than just gas and electricity. And finally, that third aspect, that third pillar, which is the policy regulatory aspect, again, we're seeing an increasing move towards more efficient products being mandated and more efficient controls. So the basic story here is that, our fundamental customer needs being addressed by the way the heating market is run and set up at the moment. I think there's a big question mark over that, and really, could new entrants, new market disruptors actually come in and address these needs and eat the traditional heat market's lunch?
And this is exactly why we developed this study about connected heating appliances. And in this final part of the webinar, I will explain you how we identified some areas of the heating market where connectivity plays a major role, and really how heating appliance manufacturers are battling against the smart control providers, and who is winning, where is the market power, how could each type of company do new propositions or new business models to actually be the one that wins out. So just stepping back a bit and trying to understand a bit more about connectivity within the heating industry, and specifically boilers actually. So there are two types of boilers in the market today. The first one is what we call the non-condensing boilers, and these are the probably 80%, 90% of what's already installed in the market. They usually have on and off controls, so it's probably just a switch on and off where you can see on your control panel. But they are less efficient and therefore have higher bills for the customer. And the good thing is for customers, they are cheaper in some countries. For example, in France, Germany, or Italy, they are easily 500 euros cheaper than the non-condensing boilers, the condensing boilers, sorry. And what does the condensing boiler do? So instead of just switching on and off, what it does is it uses the condensation to provide a more efficient heating system. And to do this modulation, you need a bit more advanced controls, which is a big debate today from smart control providers, because you need to actually be able to do this modulation to keep the high efficiency of the boiler. Some reviews of industries say that this higher efficiency can go from 10 to 15%, and that results in lower bills from 10 to 50% for the customers. In some countries, and soon in all the European countries, these boilers will be mandated, so you are not allowed anymore to install non-condensing boilers in most European countries. And the final point here to understand is that on and off controls don't work really well with condensing or modulating boilers because of the whole modulation process. So you still need to have some relatively smart controls to control such boiler. So key question now, how to control heating appliances and access the data. First option is on the right-hand side of this arrow, where we have, for example, close controls. And by close control, we mean actually the boiler manufacturer not sharing the protocol, and therefore you can only switch on and off the boiler. Well, you have a few smart thermostat providers that started with that, like Hive, Netatmo, Nest, and others as well. But what they just did basically is turn on and off the boiler with a better interface, as simple as that. In the middle part of this diagram, we can see a partial access to the heating appliance, and there are two ways to do that. One is through the open therm control, which is an open protocol in the heating industry that links boilers and heating controls, and it's supposed to be open, and therefore heating controls can control the modulation of the boiler, which is quite interesting because then you don't lose the efficiency. And some of the smart thermostat companies that do that now are, for example, Plugwise, QB, Tato, and now Nest even recently announced that they joined the OpenTherm platforms to be able to control modulating boilers. Another way to do that is what Deltaee is doing, and it's quite interesting actually, because when boiler manufacturers have closed protocols and when OpenTherm is not available, you cannot really control the boiler and the modulation, so you lose some efficiency. And what Deltaee did is, and still is doing, is cracking the boiler protocol and the codes that are behind, so that actually they are able to control everything in the boiler. But obviously this requires a lot of engineers, developers to crack the codes, and it's not easy, but they have lots of guys working on that, and they announced that they have completed 95% of cracking all the boilers in Europe. So you can see the market power on their side as well. And finally, the best way to control heating appliances is obviously to have the agreement from the boiler manufacturers who open their protocols to their providers. So that's what Bosch did in the UK with the Hive smart thermostats. That's what Vaillant did with Netatmo across Europe. So it's a smart thermostats which provide a better interface, nice to customer with a nice app, and the boiler manufacturers just opening the controls, so that at the end the smart thermostat provider can actually control the modulation. And another way to do that is actually do it yourself. So most of the big boiler manufacturers are working on the side to develop their own controls with better interface. The challenge here is that someone in Nest or Nest in general is able to bring better interfaces to customers than someone like a big boiler manufacturer that has been around and is focusing on the installer. So the challenge is whether boiler manufacturers can actually keep up with the innovation here. So that's a big question. So if in terms of the close control, what are the advantages of doing so? So in Europe, we have seen, this is not a massively reference number, but we can see 10 to 12% savings when replacing the traditional controls with smart thermostats, just with on and off controls. And that's simply because customers are not used to program their thermostats, and therefore, well, maybe the thermostat is on while they work and therefore they lose money. Simply by having a better interface, they are able to save money, and that the estimations are between 10 and 12%. However, the second point on this list is that when there is a condensing boiler, so the modulation boiler, they are losing 5 to 10% efficiency because they don't have the control of the modulation. And that's the key issue, especially in countries like Belgium, where actually there has been a lot of bad publicity for smart thermostats because of that. But what's written in blue here on the bottom left is that actually with on and off controls, the end user comfort and control values are already achieved. So as a smart thermostat providers, you don't necessarily need to do the modulation. One, because you do the values, and second, because 90 or 80% of the markets is not on modulating boilers. So for now, it's relatively strong options to just keep on and off. But in the future, it may be different. Secondly, when you have a partial access to the heating appliances, what happens? Well, one is obviously you're able to control the condensing boilers, the modulation, and therefore you don't have this 5 to 10% loss in efficiency. You also do a bit of savings on top of the 10 to 12%, depending also on the previous usage and how it was controlled before. However, there is a big battle in getting the data out of the boiler, and there are reasons to that. To do remote diagnostics, to better understand how the boiler works and provide better services. And by having only a partial access to the boiler, you have a limited access to the boiler data, and therefore the services you can do won't be as great as you would do if you had the full access to the boiler data. Which is why it's really interesting to actually be in partnerships with a boiler manufacturer, because you can control all the boilers, you have almost a full access to all the data, and as British Gas is doing in the UK with remote diagnostics, they actually can offer the services that go with it. So here is the picture of how connectivity and how the closed versus open protocols impact the market here. Now, talking a bit more about one particular use case which is really interesting and which will bring a lot of value to the heating industry, remote diagnostics. So what remote diagnostics does actually is the smart thermostats or the control is able to detect in advance whether there will be a fault within the boiler. And by providing a service linked to the service provider, the customer is informed before it breaks down that, well, let's say well, your boiler won't provide hot water in 6 hours, and therefore the servicing company can send someone out. And that's massively interesting for customers who are sure that there won't be any problem. If you have young children, you don't want to have the crisis of the cold shower at night. If you have elderly people, again, you need to have the heating on all the time. So people are willing to pay a lot of money for that. So on the table on this slide, we compared 3 different remote diagnostics offerings that are already on the market. And based on different criteria, you can see on the table. So just to list the criteria, the first one is the opportunity to retrofit any type of heating system. And what Deltaee does is just simply putting an on and off thermostat or reverse engineering thermostat on the boiler, and therefore they can put that on every single boiler they want. So there is a massive opportunity for them to do that. British Gas and Nefit, which is part of Bosch, well, they need to put it on the most recent boilers, and again, it's mostly the 5 to 7 years old boiler. So again, there is a limitation here in the number of systems you can install to. So here, advantage smart thermostat provider. On the second criteria is it's more about sorry about technical issues. So the proven record of offering the service to the customer. So what British Gas and Nefit have done in the past 2 years, they have trialed these remote diagnostic systems, and they showed that most of the faults can be detected in advance and that people really like that service. Well, Deltaee is just actually providing a service like the test during the summer if your boiler is working by switching it on and off. So again, the advantage is more on the companies that have access to the boiler. The size of the current energy service business, which is the third point, is really, really important, because the bigger the service, the bigger value you can generate from that. For example, British Gas has 4 million customers with a boiler maintenance contract, and therefore they have hundreds or thousands of plumbers out there trying to maintain the boilers or fix the problems. And by having remote diagnostics working, they can actually make sure that when they turn to a house, they have already the right parts to replace, instead of doing 2 trips back to the house. And therefore, that saves a lot of money for the big service providers. So again, advantage more to the British Gas on this side. And the fourth point, which should be the most important point in the future, is the access to the boiler data. And because British Gas has a partnership with Bosch in the UK, and because Nefit has access to its own data, you can do much more with that data on that regard. So here is a benchmarking, and you can see that actually for remote diagnostics, boiler manufacturers or their partners like British Gas have a big advantage there. Another interesting use case is the combination of smart thermostats and smart room controls. For example, Honeywell is providing thermostats and radiator valves for a long time, and what they are doing now is putting everything together so that they are able to control the boiler, control every room of the house, and therefore bring a higher efficiency to the whole system. And that's quite interesting, because boiler manufacturers usually don't have an idea of what's happening in every room. If in the bedroom you want 20 degrees, if in the kitchen you want 15, it doesn't really know that. So there is a bit of loss in efficiency there. And now you can see startups moving towards that model as well, with companies like Deltaee, Plugwise, manufacturing digital TRVs as well to move towards that. And boiler manufacturers actually are not yet in that space. So although they provide smart thermostats, very few of them provide the room controls like Bosch has announced last year they will do with their TRVs. But again, there is a big battle between understanding what is the demand from the customer on the temperature side, the climate control, and what the boiler can provide, and therefore the efficiency. So on that side, that's why we probably say that the smart control providers are winning that battle, and the market power is on their side. Final series of use cases that we will talk about in this webinar is actually the integrated energy system control, where you have different inputs in terms of heating and energy, and how connectivity impacts that. So on this first use case is actually our colleague John Slow in the office has that. at home. He installed solar PV, and he's using a PV optimization system to actually say, well, when I have too much generation and my house don't need it, the electricity is being sent to the hot water tank of his boiler. And it uses that to heat up the hot water tank, and therefore it's free electricity. And therefore you can save, you could potentially save a lot of money on that regard, because hot water is one of the biggest part of the heating bill. So that's one interesting use case, but the opportunity is limited by the number of solar PV installed, by the market itself, and again, it depends a lot on regulations and the feed-in tariff, for example, which changes constantly in Europe. A very interesting case, actually, is when you combine a boiler, so a gas power heating, with a heat pump, and electricity powered heating. And by adding smart controls with that, you can actually decide, well, it's really cold outside, the heat pump will be running really inefficiently, so the electricity bill will be high. So when it's really cold, I will only use the boiler. When it's mild outside, maybe you can use a combination of the boiler and the heat pump. And when it's relatively warm, the heat pump will do a great job because it will be more efficient with this temperature. So again, optimizing the consumption of the whole system will be quite interesting and a good proposition for customers. On top of that, if you look at the announcement from Ineco, which is actually retrofitting existing boilers with a small heat pump, these will be interesting use cases to develop for them, because there is lots they can do with that. The third example I want to talk about is what's happening mostly in Germany, actually, because in some of the German houses you have huge hot water tanks, and they can use this hot water tank to use that as a thermal store and power both the domestic hot water and the space heating. And because of that, then you are able to provide multiple sources of heat or electricity to do so, like heat pumps, solar thermal, a gas boiler, fuel cell, etc. So you can put all these high efficiency technologies to power your thermal store, and then save a lot of money for your heating and hot water. Finally, the combination of solar PV and heat pumps. So obviously heat pumps are powered by electricity, and when you have installed solar PV, it's really understanding, well, like in the first scenario actually, when I generate more than I consume, then send all the electricity you want to power the heat pump and therefore provide free heating. So that's one of the use cases that, again, we see a lot in Germany, but that might be used more and more across Europe because of the development of the solar PV markets, because electricity-based heatings are good technologies if there is free electricity. So the general picture here is that actually if you are smart control providers, it might be quite difficult to do that. But on the other hand, if you are a boiler manufacturer, let's say like a German boiler manufacturer, what is the likelihood that all the appliances that you will use with your heating system will be from the same brand? So if I'm a customer, maybe I will buy a heat pump from another brand and the boiler from your brand, and therefore how does that whole integrate? And there is no clear association or standards that integrate everything. So actually, as a smart control provider, you might be able to do the integration much easier than big manufacturers. So again, we see a kind of big battle between the two, and there are lots of examples across Europe that show that that it's a big battle, and there will be lots to win out from that.
I think what this demonstrates actually is this more energy systems approach. I mean, it's very interesting what's springing up and how the different combination of technologies, how they're being used, results in real synergies. And you built onto this a new business model. You add on the proposition is about a model where you're drawing the minimum amount from the grid, or where you've got the lowest energy bills, and it gives you lots of options, and you can see lots of possibilities, lots of different battles appearing in these different parts of the market.
So just to summarize the battle between the heating appliance manufacturers on the left-hand side and the smart control providers, well, here we listed the 6 areas of the heating industry where we see battles. So on the left-hand side, where we think heating appliance manufacturers are most likely to win out, or where they have the market power, it's remote diagnostics and integrated energy system controls. But on the smart control providers, actually connected or smart controls, integrated, centralized and room controls, as I explained, like with the radiator valves, demand response and data analytics can actually be a much more powerful play here. So you can see that the industry moves towards a very traditional heating appliance manufacturer driven, and the smart control provider are actually disrupting the whole thing by bringing connectivity into the thing. Is it just by providing better interfaces, better analysis? There is a lot of reasons why they would want and why they will win out, and why these smart control providers are actually a big threat to the industry. It will be very hard for heating appliance manufacturers to innovate as quickly as the control providers, because usually their innovation or product development time is around 5 years, while startups can be as quickly as a few months. So how to keep up with them, how to develop new areas in your company to keep up, those will be key challenges for the industry if they don't want to be disrupted by these new and more innovative players. So just to summarize the key 4 points of our study in this webinar. So the first one is, as Scott explained, the heating industry is transforming rapidly in most area of the supply chain, like the manufacturers, the wholesaler, and the customer end. Connectivity is creating new battles within the transformation, and actually the market power between heating appliance manufacturers and the smart control manufacturers will depend on what use cases we're looking at. But in general, smart control providers seem to have the advantage today. And finally, again, the smart control providers are likely to be better at innovating and maintain the customer interface, updating the apps, interviewing customers to make better products, etc. The only problem is getting full access to the boiler data will be difficult, because the boiler manufacturers usually don't like to open their protocols. So perhaps a partnership approach between the two of them could be a winning proposition, or like Deltaee is doing, reverse engineering all the protocols might also be an option to get access to the whole data. So again, we will do more and more work on this area, because it's an exciting part, and as Scott explained, it's a 20 billion euro market. So there will be lots and lots that will be done in the future.
Thanks, Arthur. So we've heard our view on why we think connectivity has a key part to play in the disruption we're seeing in the European heating market. We have probably some time for questions and comments. Just a comment from Francesco. It was just about the previous slide, Arthur, about we also need open protocols partnerships to get data from the inverter. That was the optimization of heat pump using free electricity from PV.
Yes, and actually there are developments being made in that regards in Germany with the EE-Bus Association. And what they want to do, they brought together heating manufacturer, appliance manufacturer, PV manufacturers, utilities even. And what they want to do is to create standards that are actually making functionalities of every appliance together. For example, every solar PV will be providing the same functionalities. Every heat pump will be providing temperature up and down, heating on and off, etc. So by abstracting the key functionalities of each, what they want to do is to provide an open protocol that will communicate between any kind of heat pump and any kind of PV, and therefore optimize the whole value chain on that regard. So yes, open protocols are important, or standardization organizations like the EE-Bus one that does that, that tries to do that in Germany.
Great, thanks Francesco for that. Hope that answered your question. And if you have any other questions at all, any other comments, we're happy to answer them. We've run out of time a bit here, so feel free to send them through, and we're happy to answer them directly. Also, if you've got any other questions or comments, we'd be delighted to talk to you over the phone. You see our contact details there. And if you'd like a presentation, some of you have already, just email us and we'll be happy to forward that presentation to you.
And again, we can discuss with you about a number of topics, like the Connected Home, obviously, where we focus this webinar on, but also on the overall heating market in Europe, where we focus most of our work in the last 12, 13 years. We have research about heat pumps, about micro CHP, and the overall European heating market. So I'm really happy to have and exchange a few discussions with you on these topics. We are also developing lots of work around the data analytics. So there will be, watch your emails, there will be something coming out soon, another webinar where we introduce that topic. But again, the whole energy system is transforming, and there are lots of exciting things to look at, and we try to keep on top of that. So again, really happy to discuss with you about any of this.
Yeah, so thanks all for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. You know, we know everybody's busy, and we look forward to speaking to you again in the future and maybe seeing you on another one of our webinars.
Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.